Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host, Gershwin, and today we're going to be talking about the Destroyer Squad of the Horus Heresy and Great Crusade era. This is a viewer request. If you guys have any suggestions for topics, please let me know what they are in the comment section below. I'll try to create a video for you guys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day. And if you enjoy our content, thank our patrons on Patreon. It is because of them that we can do this. A link is down in the description if you guys want to support. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Destroyer Squad. The Adeptus Astartes warriors of the current millennium are equipped with the Imperium's deadliest war gear, from Firstborn Devastator squads to Primaris Eradicator squads. However, there existed a formation in the ancient Space Marine legions of the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy era that had access to weapons so destructive that many of the Primarchs shunned the use of these squads unless they were truly desperately needed. Known as the Destroyer Squad, the Battle Brothers that made up this formation were the only warriors sanctioned to use the forbidden weaponry of the Unification Wars. This included radiation-based weaponry that would horrifically alter human DNA in an instant, reducing the enemy into a pile of deformed flesh and bone. Biochemical munitions that would not only mutilate the biological makeup of the attacking enemy, but their children and their children. And the burning horrors of phosphac ammunition, a corrosive and toxic incendiary compound that would eat away at living tissue and could not be extinguished unless exposed to the vacuum of space. They were all weapons created during the Age of Strife and used by the sadistic, techno-barbarian warlords of old Earth. These weapons of mass destruction rendered entire life-sustaining human colonies completely uninhabitable. The weapons were so terrible and inhumane that the Emperor of Mankind finally outlawed their use after the Unification Wars. No Imperial Army soldier, except for the Space Marines, would have access to this kind of destructive power. Once terror was pacified and the Emperor embarked on his Great Crusade, a few factions of the Martian priesthood were sanctioned to use these weapons, but only if given direct approval from the Emperor himself. The privilege to become part of a Destroyer Squad was both an honor and a curse, as many of the legions viewed these Space Marines as somehow tainted by the forbidden weapons they carried. Every battle brother in the Legion understood that the Destroyers were merely a necessary evil in the turbulent times of the Great Crusade, but even then, the Marines were shunned and looked down upon. That is until their power was required on the battlefield, at which time none could deny the effectiveness of these relic weapons, as entire formations were ripped clean off the face of the earth. The drawbacks of using such deadly weaponry was the inevitable physical toll it took on the Legionnaires' body. Despite their genetically enhanced Astartes physiology, Destroyer Squad Space Marines often displayed the physical effects of long-term use and proximity to such toxic weaponry. This included radiation-induced cellular degeneration, abnormally pale skin that displayed unhealthy lightning storms of veins and blood bruises staining the entire flesh, yellow jaundiced eyes, and the aggressive and rare forms of cancer, which often resulted in the replacement of the affected organs with some type of augmetic replacement. Their power armor was also irreversibly altered, as the weapons gave the destroyers a fire-blackened and chem-scald look. There was one legion in particular that was able to embrace the effectiveness of these squads. Under their Primarch Mortarion, the Death Guard quickly became associated with the use of chemical and radiation weaponry. This further darkened the Death Guard's reputation with their fellow Space Marines, however. Simply put, the use of toxic gases, crawling burning phosphates, and contaminated rad shells didn't do anything to the Legion's honor as it did for some. While Mortarion himself was a master of such weapons and a student of the most horrific arts of war, he had no problem with their use against any foe that threatened humanity. To add to this, the physiology of the Death Guard was based on Mortarion's genome, and it was engineered to even be more resilient to toxic environments than the usual Space Marines of other legions. This led the Legion to be more and more frequently deployed into battle zones or war zones where hellish and lethal conditions were present, and thus they excelled in these situations. This in turn resulted in a kind of self-fulfilling fate for the Death Guard, as they were ever more associated with the most nightmarish parts of war, and in them the use of the most terrible weapons. A theme of horror and corruption seemed to adhere to the Death Guard then, long before the Horus Heresy was born, and they came to be some of the most shunned of their fellow legions in the way that the Dusk Raiders had never been. There were other legions that made use of the Destroyer formation. For example, a Destroyer cadre did exist within the White Scars Legion, but in limited numbers. Known as the Dark Sons of Death, their armor was painted a dull black and covered with shamanic charms to ward off the evil spirits that followed in their wake. These grim warriors, often considered deranged and as bad omens, did not serve with any single brotherhood, but instead were placed under the direct supervision of the Stormseer Council. Only deployed when both the Khan and the Seer agreed they needed to be let loose. This apparently pagan superstition appeared to serve simply as a tool to vilify the use of extreme measures represented by the Destroyers, a choice known to have originated with Jagatai Khan himself, who held little respect for those who resorted to such measures too frequently. And then there are the Angel's Tears, who also had the title of Emerlin, the Silver Masks, and the Hands of Justice. They served the Blood Angels in place of the more common destroyers of other legions. They took to the field of battle only in the direct command of Sanguinius himself, serving as his agents on those rare occasions when the Great Angel deemed an enemy worthy of only annihilation. They were armed with the typical Devastator weaponry, and they descended upon the foe suddenly and unannounced, their faces concealed in the silver death masks of their order, and oaths of retribution on their lips. And those were 40 facts on the Destroyer Squad. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. There is a topic that is connected to this lore that I want to talk about really quickly. I get asked a lot whether there is nuclear weapons in 40K, and the answer is yes. A lot of the torpedoes are nuclear weapons. You should check out our 40 facts on Exterminatus. A lot of those bombs are basically just nuclear bombs, so they'll send out like your typical I forget what it's called, but it's like the one that turns everything into like biological gas and then it ignites and stuff like that. So you have like those types of bombs, but then you also have basic nuclear bombs that just it's just force destroying the entire surface of the planet. But then the follow-up question usually becomes like, oh, if there's nuclear weapons, are there radiation-based weaponry, or is there biological warfare in 40K? And the answer is obviously yes, and the Destroyer Squads are that example of that. The cool thing about it is that GW has chosen a very a typical answer to biological weapons, and basically any weapon that not only devastates the enemy but devastates the area around it just indiscriminately. Like, it doesn't care whether it's like a civilian, whether it's a plant, an animal, it's going to completely destroy it. The fact that the Imperium says like, hey, let's not use this type of weaponry, that says a lot. That's kind of cool. And also like Exterminatus and stuff like that is rare, kind of. But yeah, so the Destroyer Squad answers that question of like, is there modern weaponry in the 40K universe? And the answer is yes, and it is as evil as it is today, like biological weapons, to the extent of messing up the DNA of a population for generations and generations. So hopefully this helps you, create some cool like fan lore or anything like that. Hopefully it inspires you to do that. And if you're homebrewing, I know there are some pretty cool pre-orders coming up for the Primaris Marines, the what are they called? The Eradicators. So it'd be cool to like somehow mix the lore of the Destroyer Squads of the Legions into your Devastator Squad. So if you can do that, that would be awesome. And I hope reading the lore helped out. If you guys have any other suggestions, because like I said in the beginning of this video, this was a viewer request, just ask away in the comment section below. We'll try our best to create a video. And thanks for listening, guys. But that's all I have to say. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Oh, I guess this was my pretty